girl in me at that point knew that my daddy wasn't coming back. My dad wasn't coming back to be a dad. He wasn't coming back to my mother. Our grandchildren would not know their grandfather. My name is Denise Schick. I am an author and the founder and director of the ministry called Help for Families. When I was 9 years old, my father had shared with me a secret, and that secret was that he wanted to become a woman. I didn't realize at that moment what that would entail in my own life and how his struggle would soon impact me. By the time I started to mature as a young woman, he had sexually molested me, and I became even further confused. By the age of 13, I started to seek out other relationships. I needed the affirmation of having a man love me, which of course led me into the wrong path many times. By the time I was in 7th grade, I recall having 13 boyfriends. I was so in need of being fulfilled as somebody recognizing me as a girl and loving me, everything that I did not get from my own father. The struggles continued to intensify at home as my father also had a peek hole in our bathroom. It became very uncomfortable to say, I am a girl and this is who I am, to be comfortable in that skin. The enviness and the jealousy that existed in the home became very intense with my dad and I. He had started to wear my clothing as I started to grow older. I was so empty inside and seeking the love and the attention of a father, and I couldn't find that. Right about that time where I thought, is life worth going on for? You know, is there possibly a better life if my life was to end and I could end this pain? When I was 15 years old, I started to date a young man named Mark, who's now my husband. And when I first met Mark, he seemed so different. He respected me. It wasn't like he was out for sex. He wasn't out to just use me. He wanted to get to know who I was as a person inside. During this time, Mark had finally said to me, I want to know why you're so distant with your father. And I thought, how can I tell him? He's going to leave me. And Mark had finally come to the point where he said, I need to know, and I need to know now. And that was the toughest thing as we sat in the school parking lot. And as I'm telling him, you know, my father had told me when I was 9 years old that this is what he struggled with and this is what he does. He just looked at me and gave me a hug. He didn't get out of that Jeep or say, I'm taking you home, I don't want to see you anymore. Mark continued to teach me by coming back into our home and visiting with my dad like he always had. But Mark continued to be like a friend to my father, a male friend who did not reject him because of what he struggled with. Mark had taught me as well that men can be safe. For so long I was confused if they were safe. I really wasn't sure if a man was safe enough to be with for an entire lifetime. Years had gone by and Mark and I had gotten married when I was 18 years old. By the time I was 27, my father had left our family to pursue becoming a transgender person, as he felt that would fulfill his life. 13 years had gone by that I had not seen my father. You see, at the time where he had left, Mark and I now had 4 young children. And I knew how the confusion in the home had impacted me, questioning my own gender. You know, thinking that if God had really made Dad a man, but yet he's telling me he's a woman, how do I know that I'm really not supposed to be a man? We had received word that my father was dying of esophagus cancer. And I thought, how dare he, you know, come back to us when he had really deserted us and left us, as we had asked him to go for counseling, to seek somebody to help him, but he had refused. Nothing's more difficult than walking into this hospital room with your father with women's slippers on and a women's robe and nightgown. Nothing can prepare you for this. So I was really angry, but I really was hurt inside because the little girl in me at that point knew that my daddy wasn't coming back. My dad wasn't coming back to be a dad. He wasn't coming back to my mother. Our grandchildren would not know their grandfather. And that was really hurtful. Through the next 6 months of his cancer, I knew that I had to pay my dad a visit to really forgive him. And I just needed to tell him, face to face as an adult, you had caused this pain, you had sexually abused me, and do you realize how this had affected my life? And at the end of the visit to say, I forgive you. And to know at that point that I had really forgiven him. I had laid it down once and for all. After the illness started to take him over, we were going back and forth as much as we could. Started to learn more intensely of the emotional pain that he'd been through. I knew that he was sexually abused. I knew that he felt rejected by his father. My grandmother was an alcoholic. He was known in town as the little lost boy. So I started to grasp an adult level of the pain that was in my dad's life. And I soon discovered the love that I had for my father. Although my father looked like a woman, lived as a woman, on his deathbed, he had told my mother, I thought this would give me all the satisfaction that I sought after, but it didn't. And that's why it's so important to treat the person for what's going on in the heart. It's an issue of the heart. We so often can get lost in everything going on the outside when God wants us to focus on the person and what's going on the inside.